Welcome back to Revise and Resubmit, the podcast that takes, those really dense academic papers and makes them surprisingly interesting. I'm Pavlov.
And I'm Nikita.
Today we're tackling something, it might sound a bit dry at first, academic research methods. But trust me, this one's a gem. We're going to explore how researchers choose the right tools to study organizations and teams, and believe it or not, this can help you evaluate information in any field. Think about it if you ever read a report and thought, wait, these conclusions don't really line up with the evidence. We're going to unpack why that happens and what you can do about it.
It all boils down to choosing the right research method for the type of question you're asking and the level of existing knowledge you have. It's like using a scalpel for surgery instead of a butter knife. The right tool makes all the difference.
And to guide us through this deep dive, we have a fantastic article, Methodological Fit in Management Field Research, by Amy C. Edmondson and Stacy E. McManus. They've created this brilliant framework that's all about making sure your research methods match the maturity of the theory you're exploring.
Their central point is that a mismatch can lead to some serious issues. Weak research, redundant studies that just reinvent the wheel, or even worse, misleading conclusions that send us down the wrong path.
Okay, so let's break down this framework. The authors start by talking about a theory continuum. Can you paint a picture of what that looks like?
Imagine a spectrum of knowledge. On one end, you have mature theory. Think gravity. We have tons of research. Everyone agrees on how it works, and we can use it to make accurate predictions. In the business world, a mature theory might be something like basic team dynamics. We have a pretty solid understanding of how teams function.
So mature theory is the stuff we have a good grasp on. Got it. Yeah. What about the other end of the spectrum?
That's where things get exciting. We enter the realm of nascent theory, the brand new, cutting-edge stuff. It's like trying to study the social impact of teleportation. Before it's even invented, lots of unknowns, uncharted territory.
So with nascent theory, we're basically wading to the unknown. It's more about exploration and discovery than testing specific hypotheses, right?
Exactly. It's about generating those initial hypotheses. Take James Barker's work on concerted control in self-managed teams. Now, you might be familiar with the term concerted control, but just in case, it describes how a form of control can emerge from within a team itself, even without a traditional hierarchy. Barker spent 2 years embedded in a manufacturing company, observing teams and having informal conversations to understand this phenomenon.
2 years? That sounds like some serious dedication to getting those rich qualitative insights. His work actually challenges some of our assumptions about self-managed teams, right?
Absolutely. He found that this self-generated control can sometimes be even more restrictive than traditional top-down bureaucracy. That's a perfect example of how qualitative methods like observations and interviews can really illuminate these nuanced dynamics in a nascent field.
So we've got mature theory on one end, nascent theory on the other. What about the stuff in between?
That's what they call intermediate theory. We've got some ideas, some early research, but we're still figuring things out, like the long-term effects of remote work on company culture, a relatively new phenomenon, and we're still gathering data.
Okay, so we've got our theory continuum. How does this all tie back to choosing the right research methods?
Well, each point on that continuum requires a different approach. For mature theory, quantitative methods are king. Think surveys, statistical analysis, crunching numbers to prove cause and effect.
Can you give us an example of a study that nailed this quantitative approach?
Absolutely. Stewart and Barrick's research on team structure is a classic. They wanted to see how different team structures, like hierarchical versus self-managing, influence team performance depending on the task. They had existing knowledge to build on, clear hypotheses, and they used survey data to test those hypotheses and find the evidence they needed.
So for well-understood topics, surveys and stats are your go-to tools. But when we venture into the realm of nascent theory, those in-depth qualitative methods really shine.
Precisely. It's less about proving something definitively and more about exploring, generating those initial hypotheses, getting a feel for the landscape, but what happens when we're somewhere in between?
That's where things get really interesting to me. We're in that intermediate zone where we have some knowledge, but still need to refine our understanding.
And that's where a hybrid approach can be powerful, blending the best of both worlds. You can use quantitative data to test emerging ideas and see if they hold up, while simultaneously using qualitative data to dig deeper into the nuances and meaning behind those findings.
It sounds like a more holistic approach, acknowledging that not everything fits neatly into a quantitative box. Do you have a favorite example of a study that use this hybrid approach effectively?
Amy Edmondson's work on psychological safety in teams is a fantastic example. She used both quantitative and qualitative data to explore how team climate impacts learning and performance. By combining surveys with in-depth interview, she was able to both test her theories and gain a richer understanding of the underlying dynamics.
I love how this framework is shaping up. You're matching the research method to the maturity of the knowledge. But what are the consequences of getting this wrong? What happens if you use the wrong tool for the job, right, so to speak?
That's where things can go off the rails, leading to those weak or misleading conclusions we talked about earlier. For instance, imagine you're trying to study a brand new phenomenon, like the impact of virtual reality on workplace collaboration, using only surveys.
You'd be missing out on so much rich information. It's like trying to understand the culture of a foreign country. Just by looking at population statistics, you need to immerse yourself in the lived experience.
Exactly. Or imagine using only qualitative data for a well-understood topic, like the relationship between job satisfaction and turnover. You might end up rehashing old ideas and reinventing the wheel. Not necessarily wrong, just not very efficient or impactful.
It strikes me that choosing the wrong method could even lead to misleading results. Could you give us a concrete example of how this could happen?
Let's say you're studying the effectiveness of a new leadership training program. Using only self-reported survey data, participants might report feeling more confident, but without observing their actual behavior or gathering feedback from their teams. You can't truly determine if the training led to any real changes in leadership skills.
That makes total sense. You could end up with this glowing report based on self-perception. But the reality on the ground might be completely different. I'm starting to see how this methodological fit idea can help me be a more critical consumer of information in general.
It's like having a superpower, the ability to look beyond the surface and assess whether the evidence truly supports the claims.
It's like we're learning to spot those red flags. Research that might look impressive at first glance,
Yeah.
but falls apart under closer scrutiny.
And what's fascinating is that this framework, though born in the academic world, can be applied to any field, even our daily lives.
That's what makes this so valuable. For our listeners, it's not just for researchers in ivory towers, it's a tool for anyone who wants to become a more discerning consumer of information. Whether you're reading a news article, evaluating a product review, or even just trying to understand a complex issue, this FIT framework can help you cut through the noise.
Think of it this way. When you encounter new information, ask yourself, how established is this knowledge? Is this a well-trodden path? Or are we venturing into uncharted territory?
That's a great point. And then you can consider whether the methods used to gather the information are appropriate. Are they using robust quantitative analysis for a well-established phenomenon? Or relying on a handful of anecdotes to support a brand new idea?
Precisely. And if there's a mismatch, that's a red flag. It doesn't necessarily mean the information is wrong, but it does mean you need to proceed with caution and maybe look for additional evidence.
I'm already starting to see the world through this methodological lens. It's like I've been handed this decoder ring for understanding the validity of information. And I'll admit, it makes me question some of the things I've taken for granted in the past.
I think that's a natural reaction once you
Yeah.
start to understand these principles. You can't unsee them, but that's a good thing. It means you're becoming a more critical thinker.
Speaking of critical thinking, the article focuses on research teams. But you've also spent a lot of time studying how teams function in general. I'm curious, how might this framework apply to teams at work? Could it actually help them make better decisions and solve problems more effectively?
Absolutely. Imagine you're on a team tasked with improving customer satisfaction. Before you jump into brainstorming solutions, it's crucial to understand the nature of the problem. Are we dealing with a mature issue where there's a lot of existing data and established best practices? Or is this a nascent challenge where we're in uncharted territory and need to embrace experimentation and innovative thinking?
I see what you mean. It would be a mistake to approach a brand new problem with the same rigid, data-driven approach that you might use for a well-understood issue. You might miss out on those creative, outside-the-box solutions.
Exactly. And just like in research, the intermediate zone requires a blend of approaches. You might start by analyzing existing customer data to identify pain points, but then follow up with focus groups or interviews to get a deeper understanding of those issues.
It's like you're saying, don't just rely on the numbers. Go talk to your customers. Understand their lived experience.
Precisely. This framework encourages teams to pause and ask, What's the best way to approach this challenge, given what we know? And it reminds us that the knowledge-building process is rarely linear.
The authors actually touch on that in the article, don't they? They talk about the research journey being more of a winding path than a straight line. They even have this visual model to illustrate it.
Yes, the funnel model.
Yeah.
It beautifully captures how research unfolds, emphasizing that even seasoned researchers don't always have all the answers up front. They start with a broad exploration, then narrow their focus as they gather data, sometimes needing to adjust their approach based on what they learn. And that applies to any problem-solving process, really.
It's reassuring to know that even experts have to course correct sometimes. I think that's an important message for listeners who might feel pressure to have all the answers right away. It's okay to start broad, gather information, and refine your understanding along the way.
It's about embracing that iterative process and being open to new information and adapting your approach as needed.
This is resonating with me on a personal level. I'm thinking about a recent project where my team jumped into solution mode without fully understanding the problem. We wasted a lot of time and energy going down the wrong path. If we had used this framework, I think we could have avoided that pitfall.
It's a common trap, but with this tool, you can encourage your team to pause, assess the maturity of the knowledge, and choose the approach that best fits the challenge at hand.
It's like choosing the right tools and the right mindset, and that can make all the difference in how effectively a team can solve problems and make decisions.
And that's exactly what makes this framework so powerful. It's not just a theoretical model, it's a practical guide for navigating the complexities of knowledge building and problem solving in any field.
It's like we've been given this new mental model, a way to approach problems and information with more intention and awareness.
And that's the beauty of this framework. It's not just about understanding academic research. It's about equipping you with a tool for thinking critically and making more informed decisions in all aspects of your life.
It's almost like we're training our brains to ask the right questions before jumping to conclusions or accepting something at face value.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final challenge. We've talked about how this framework can help research teams and work teams, but think about how you can apply this fit concept to your own learning journey.
That's a great point. We're all constantly learning, whether it's for work, personal growth, or just to keep our minds sharp. How can we use this framework to make that learning more effective?
Next time you're diving into a new topic, ask yourself, what kind of knowledge am I dealing with here? Is this a well-established field with tons of research, or something relatively new and unexplored?
And based on that, you can decide what kind of learning approach makes the most sense. If it's a mature field, maybe you focus on finding those foundational textbooks and research papers. But if it's a nascent area, maybe you spend more time exploring different perspectives, attending conferences, or connecting with experts who are pushing the boundaries.
Exactly. It's about tailoring your learning strategy to the nature of the knowledge itself. And remember, the iterative process we discussed earlier, be open to adjusting your approach as you learn more. What starts as a deep dive into one specific area might lead you down unexpected paths, and that's part of the joy of discovery.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. It's not just about finding the right answers. It's about embracing the journey of exploration and being open to new perspectives and unexpected connections.
So keep that fit framework in mind and never stop exploring. The world is full of fascinating information waiting to be discovered.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time. It's like we've been given this new mental model, a way to approach problems and information with more intention and awareness.
And that's the beauty of this framework. It's not just about understanding academic research. It's about equipping you with a tool for thinking critically and making more informed decisions in all aspects of your life.
It's almost like we're training our brains to ask the right questions before jumping to conclusions or accepting something at face value.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final challenge. We've talked about how this framework can help research teams and work teams, but think about how you can apply this fit concept to your own learning journey.
That's a great point. We're all constantly learning, whether it's for work, personal growth, or just to keep our minds sharp. How can we use this framework to make that learning more effective?
Next time you're diving into a new topic, ask yourself, what kind of knowledge am I dealing with here? Is this a well-established field with tons of research or something relatively new and unexplored?
And based on that, you can decide what kind of learning approach makes the most sense If it's a mature field, maybe you focus on finding those foundational textbooks and research papers. But if it's a nascent area, maybe you spend more time exploring different perspectives, attending conferences, or connecting with experts who are pushing the boundaries.
Exactly. It's about tailoring your learning strategy to the nature of the knowledge itself. And remember that iterative process we discussed earlier. Be open to adjusting your approach as you learn more. What starts as a deep dive into one specific area might lead you down unexpected paths, and that's part of the joy of discovery.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. It's not just about finding the right answers. It's about embracing the journey of exploration and being open to new perspectives and those unexpected connections.
So keep that FIT framework in mind and never stop exploring. The world is full of fascinating information, just waiting to be discovered.
And don't forget to subscribe to Revise and Resubmit on Spotify and Apple Podcasts for more captivating deep dives like this one. And if you're enjoying the show and want to support us in creating more insightful content, consider becoming a patron on Patreon. Every contribution helps us continue this journey of exploration and discovery. Until next time, keep those minds curious, keep questioning, and keep revising and resubmitting.